but I want to get things going here. And for starters, I want to talk about modeling because successful people follow models. Anybody recognize this guy here on the screen? This is Tony Robbins. And anybody ever do any of the Tony Robbins training? Anybody familiar with the Tony Robbins training and know who Tony is? He's the guy who is just known as one of the great personal development gurus of our generation. It seems like every time people go to do a Tony Robbins event, they walk on hot coals and do all these kind of special things to show just how powerful the mind can be. But here's what Tony says, because Gary Keller was influenced in a great degree by Tony Robbins. And here's what Tony says: successful people are modelers. Of all the things I'm best at is modeling. I find someone who is best at something that I want to learn, then I model them. I learn it for myself. And then when I've proven it to myself, I begin to teach it to others. And there are models out there that successful people have lived before us, and they have figured certain things out. So much of what we try to teach, or at least what I try to teach in the Keller Williams world, are best practice models, things that we know work. And success leaves clues. We don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. When it comes to listings, what we know is that there's a couple different phases of how we learn how to do it. In the very beginning, when you are brand new and you've never been on a listing appointment before, I think the listing appointment becomes a fairly scripted event. And there are places online that I can show you where to go on the Keller Williams website where I can send you and provide you a scripted listing presentation. It's not fancy. It's not the most glamorous. It's not like when you go onto your KW Command into the design shop and you can put together a really state-of-the-art looking listing presentation. This one's a little bit more toned down, but here's the benefit. It has the script printed right in it. And there's a copy for you and there's a client copy for them. And all you do, if you absolutely had to go and you were unprepared to go on a listing appointment, you could give them the client copy and you could retain the agent copy. And as long as you keep the right one, when you get to the corresponding page, it's just going to have the printed script say this and then say that, right? It's mapped right out for you. And if anybody would like a copy of that or know where to find that, raise your hand. And then at the end of this class, stick around and remind me, and I will show you where to find that on the Keller Williams website and download that for yourself. And then as you get better, right? And I've had times where people have gone out who've only been in the business for a week and they had an opportunity. They took the listing as printed and they just read it and they did fine. Is it the very best listing presentation you're ever going to do? Nope. But it's perfectly serviceable and it can get you listings. Then as you get better at things, what you're going to find is we'll give you some different scripts and you'll learn how to kind of have that conversation differently in your own way. But what I'm going to teach you today is a track and a model of what are the tasks that you're trying to accomplish here. And what do you do first and what do you do second? And ultimately, what I want you to do is to grow into a consultation model where it's just kind of a natural conversation between two people that is going in a very specific sequence that's designed to help break down any resistances that they have and to help them develop confidence in you and your skills and lead to a point where you're building momentum to getting to a hiring decision. And that's a conversation model that I'm going to outline for you tonight that I'd really love for you to learn and to get practice with. So for starters, let's talk about the difference between a presentation and a consultation. Right? Because I'm going to teach you a consultation model tonight. But a presentation is different. It's delivering a prepared content that's designed to communicate information that you've already predetermined they should know. When I get online and teach, I am in presentation mode a lot. Right? I've got a bunch of information that I want to impart to you, but that's different than when we're consulting. When we're consulting with someone, we're asking more questions. And we're helping to understand exactly what are their needs so that we can determine exactly what we should do to solve them, right? And when you become a subject matter expert, which you all become in real estate, what you're going to find is you don't need to share every bit of information with everybody. Some people are going to need to focus on some parts of your presentation. Some people are going to be more focused on other parts. We need to do a good job of consulting with them, asking the right questions to guide them through the process, so that we only have to share with them the information that's relevant to get the job done, right? And it's a different kind of an approach. So let's start and talk about sales. You guys have heard me say before, probably, sales is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. What we're trying to influence people to do is to make decisions and to get into action. And here's the thing that has to happen. And this is the way this consultation is going to be structured. In order for us to be influential with people, they have to like us and they have to trust us. Danielle, Elliott, I see you on camera right now. Would you ever allow anyone to be influential in your life that you did not like?
No.
Probably not. Laura, would you ever let anyone be influential in your life who you did not trust? Probably not. And your buyers and sellers are the same way. And so what we know is that there's certain things that we can do to influence that trust. We can think about how we communicate with them. We can focus on the pacing and the intonation and all the different things that build rapport. But here's the thing that we have to overcome. People don't like salespeople. Human beings are predisposed, it seems, to just not like salespeople. And we have a bias about salespeople. And what happens, unfortunately, is that when we show up in a sales interaction and behave in traditionally salesy ways with salesy sounding scripts and salesy sounding catchphrases and listing presentations that come off looking and feeling exactly the way you would expect a salesperson to behave, we trigger that resistance. And so one of the things that happens is, just by virtue of the fact that we're going to have a consulting conversation with them, we are showing up differently than they expect. We call that in sales or in communication a pattern interrupt. We're showing up differently than they expect us to behave, and it lowers the resistance. It interrupts the expected pattern of behavior. And so one of the things that we're going to do by consulting and asking them questions is we're going to do a triggering of what we call the self-disclosure loop. Has anybody been in another class with me before and remembers what the self-disclosure loop is and why it's so important in sales? Want to just kind of get a sense of what I've told you already and what I haven't. This is our 20th class together. And so I'm not sure if I've said this to you before, but here's what happens. Here's what the research tells us. I think it was Dale Carnegie who wrote the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And one of the things that Dale Carnegie wrote is that people love the sound of their own name. We have to find a way to make things relevant to people's own experience if we want them to pay attention. And one of the things that happens is when we ask people questions about themselves, and we ask them things that are important to them, and we ask them their opinions, and we ask them what matters, and we listen intently, not listening with the goal of just getting on to the next question, but listening, really, truly listening deeply to their answers, asking important follow-up questions so that we really understand. When we ask questions to make people feel like they're being heard and being understood, it makes them feel good. It actually makes them feel good. I heard a phrase one time that says everybody was born with a sign on that's sort of tacked to their back shirt. And it's not the one that says kick me. That's a sign I always used to tag onto the back of my little brother. I always put a little at the bottom of him. I was a bad big brother sometimes. But the sign doesn't say kick me, it says make me feel important. And if we can go through life and make people feel important, then what happens is they begin to like us. And so consulting puts people at the center of the conversation. And what the research tells us actually is that it actually triggers the release of a chemical in the brain called dopamine. When we ask people questions and ask them to self-disclose, and we pay attention, it triggers this addictive crack-like substance in the brain that kind of causes people to feel good. And they don't know exactly why it is, but they know that there's something going on in this conversation. And I don't know what it is about talking to Valerie, but I'm just loving this conversation. It makes me feel good. And that's what we're going to leverage. We don't do that in a presentation. And here's what happens. We think we do. We think that we're giving presentations and people are listening intently. I teach a lot on Zoom. This is my 6th hour of class today on Zoom. And here's what happens. We teach a lot and we think sometimes that people are just interested in our topic. They're intently paying attention. And here's what I know about teaching and presenting. This is oftentimes what's really happening.
I was just going to say that I presented a lot in my former career and I could not believe, I mean, I'm not a boring presenter for sure, but there were people who were falling asleep in front of me. And
I ask people to get on camera sometimes just so I can keep them awake, right? And because in adulthood, what we know is that when you're engaged and you're involved, it's a different experience, right? But here's the thing, what we just have to understand as a baseline is that when we go into presentation mode, people tune out a little bit. And so how do we differentiate ourselves? Well, we behave differently. So here's the framework that we're going to go through today. 7 steps. And one step leads to the other. I call it a track. And why I call it a track is it's because just like at the Kentucky Derby, which is back in the news again, poor Bob Baffert and his horse. We thought that everything was all good there. It doesn't look like it was all good down there, right? But here's what happens. All the horses have to go through the racetrack the same way. It's turn 1 before you get to turn 2, turn 2 before you get to turn 3, and then you come down the home stretch at turn 4, after turn 4, and it's in a sequence. This framework, consultation framework, has to be done in order. It cannot be done out of sequence because one section is built to lead into the next, like dominoes. And by one leading into the next, it builds momentum. Now, there's a challenge. And the challenge is that people don't know the track. They don't know where we're going next. And they want things to go in their own direction. And they sometimes will try to ask questions or throw out objections that pull us off track. And what we have to do is learn how to handle those and handle these things in the right order. We're in step number 1, which we're going to be talking about in terms of setting the agenda. And they're going to want to go right to step number 4, which has to do with setting the price. And we're going to have to learn how do we derail that and get back on track. But when we finish the task at each step, and here's the steps, guys. Here's the steps. There's 7 of them. And the last one should actually say next steps, not nest steps. But once we finish the task at each step, then we can move on. Then we get a green light. So here's the imagery we're going to work with tonight. It's red lights and green lights. And the traffic lights I stole from a book by a guy by the name of Don Espremonte called Green Light Selling, one of the very best books on using neurolinguistic language in sales. And what he says is when you get to a stoplight, you've got a task to complete in the sales process. You can't move forward into the next part of the process until you get a green light. And when you get a green light, you move on. And when we get all green lights in the process, things move really, really smoothly. Now, we will, in our listing appointments, need to have a presentation book. You're going to have a presentation book. In my first brokerage, the company created a presentation book. And it was outlining all the history of the company and when did the company start and all the brand, the mortgage company that they own and the title company that they own and why you should do business with them. And it was all sketched out. And what we were taught to do is what every agent is taught to do, is get your presentation book and go through it in order. Let's talk about what's on page 1. Let's talk about what's on page 2, etc. And you can go tonight, as soon as we're done with this class, you can go into your command account if you want and into the design shop, and you can build out your presentation book. And 95% of your colleagues in this company will go into a listing appointment and start with page 1 of that book and go through it in order. And this is where I want you to be different. You need that book as a teaching aid sometimes, but not to guide you through the sequence. You're going to have certain times when you're going to want to talk about staging, and you're going to need to go to the pages of your book that talk about staging to be able to drive those points home with pictures and have visual aids in your teaching. There's going to be times when you're going to be talking about your open house program, and you're going to need to go to the part of the book that talks about your open house program. But I want you to have the book with you, not knowing exactly which pages you're going to need to pull out, but ready to go to those pages if you need to, but following the sequential model that I'm going to give you. We good about that idea of using this as a prop book as opposed to a presentation book. Okay. You're going to have in your prop book examples of some of the forms that people are going to fill out. You're going to have in your prop book examples of some of your marketing materials, the names of some of the websites that you're going to be advertised on. But here's where we're going to go. Here are the steps. 7 of them. Number 1, take control. And we're going to unpack each one of these tonight. Step number 1, take control and set the agenda. Step number 2, do a needs analysis. Step number 3, provide education about the current market conditions and the things that are going to make a house more sellable. Step number 4 is the pricing conversation. Step number 5 is where we're going to set mutual expectations around our service plan and around communication. And we're going to find out if there's any expectations that they have of us that we can't live up to. And that's going to lead into the close where we actually ask for the business. And when we get it, step number 7 is outlining the next steps, not the next steps, but the next steps. Where do we go next? Okay. These are the 7 different steps in order that we're going to tackle tonight. But before we get started, I want to start with the phrase before we get started, because I think it's really important before we get started to set the agenda, but start by showing a little gratitude. One of the things that I start every class with is I try to ask people, what's going on in your real estate life? What are you grateful for? What's something that we can celebrate? And I do that very intentionally because I know that if we can get some positive energy in the room, it opens us up to a better learning experience. And gratitude is something that is really important to give to sellers at the beginning of every listing presentation. Why? Because we have 2 main objectives, maybe 3. Objective number 1, I got to get you to like me. Objective number 2, I've got to get you to trust that I know what I'm doing. And if I achieve objective number 1 and objective number 2, then I might be able to get objective number 3, is to get you to hire me. And so I'm going to start by giving a little bit of gratitude strategically because it helps you begin to like me more. And so before we get started, I just want to take a moment, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, and tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to be with you this evening. I know that there's lots and lots of agents that you could be interviewing tonight. And anytime that I get the opportunity to be here in front of you, I want to let you know how much I appreciate it. It just sets the right tone, right? Now, here's the thing. I hope it's honest, because if you're just saying those words and they're empty words and you don't really appreciate the opportunity to be there, they'll catch you. People's BS meters are really sensitive. And if you're telling them you're grateful for the opportunity to be there and it just sounds like an empty script, I would rather you leave it out. If you feel it, say it. I hope you feel it, because these opportunities are hard to come by sometimes. I really do hope that you're grateful for the chance to get involved in people's lives in such a meaningful way. But we start by setting that agenda of taking a moment to be grateful. And then we move into this. This is a short step. Step number 1. It's brief, 2 minutes, maybe 1, where we're going to outline where we're going to go tonight. And it simply sounds like this. Shakira, before we get started, I want to take a moment to tell you how I envision things going tonight. For the next 60 minutes, we're going to talk about what brings you into the marketplace to sell your home, what you're trying to accomplish in your sale, where are you going, why that's so important to you. We're going to talk about your motivation, and we're going to talk a little bit about what needs to happen for this to be a successful and good experience for you. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the market environment that we find ourselves in and the things that we're going to need to do to have success. We're going to spend some time talking about pricing your home, and we're going to look at some comps and review your home in comparison to some others so that we can kind of get a sense of where to price this home. And we're just going to outline where we're going, guys, step by step by step. And I just saw in chat, Veronica has an offer that just got accepted. Where are you, Veronica? Are you on camera here? Somewhere online. She must have, maybe she jumped off. Oh, she is there. Veronica, congratulations to you on your offer being accepted, right? We do this in Zoom. We do jazz hands because they can't all hear us, right? So we give you the jazz hands. Why do we take a minute to set the agenda? Why do we set the outline of what we're going to do for the next 60 minutes? Anybody have any thoughts around that?
So they can feel comfortable and know what's coming next.
So they can feel comfortable, so they can know what's coming next. Why is that important?
So they're not overwhelmed.
So they're not overwhelmed. Is selling your house an overwhelming experience?
I'd say so.
Yes. Even if we're doing it for positive reasons, we're not looking forward to the process, right? And so we set the agenda for a couple reasons. Number one is when people know that we've got a plan, they feel more in control. And one of the things that we learned is that when people feel in control, their anxiety level goes down. Selling your house, guys, is an anxiety-producing experience. If you look at different measures, selling your house is seen as one of the biggest disruptive forces that can happen in a lifetime. And so there's a reason why we don't move that often, because it's a pain in the neck, right? When I have a plan, people feel safer. I learned this in healthcare, guys. And here's what I learned. Has anybody ever had an outpatient procedure done, same day surgery? You're going to go to the hospital, have it done, and come home same day. Has anybody ever had that of some kind? When that happens, right? What do they typically do? They typically ask you to have a pre-appointment where you come in and they walk you through what to expect, right? I just recently had an NG tube done where they sort of had me come in advance, and they said, here's what's going to happen. You're going to come in, you're going to meet at this time, you're going to come to this department. This is the person who's going to take your insurance information. And after that, we're going to walk you down the hall. This is the area where we do the pre-op. It's only going to take a few minutes. You're going to meet the doctor and the anesthesiologist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And why do they walk us through the steps? Well, here's why. Because they know that for the most part, on the day that you're having your procedure, you're going to be nervous. And if they can lower your anxiety when you show up, if you're less nervous, you're going to need less pain medication. You're going to need less anesthesia. You're going to recover faster and not have as many side effects and ultimately have a better outcome. And that's the same thing that happens for us. When we take charge of the process, number one, we're in control. If we're not in control, who's going to be? Someone else. And what's going to happen if somebody else is in control of my listing presentation? I don't know. It might end well and it might not. So step number one is simply this. We're going to come in, we're going to set the agenda. This is what we're going to do tonight. And we're going to ask if they have any questions that might have come from the pre-listing assignment that we gave them. Now, if we were in the Winwood Sellers course, we would have spent a whole session on the pre-listing package. What's the information that we're going to send them in advance to take a look at before we show up, right? And you can go online to the Winwood Sellers course on the YouTube channel, the Bergen Partners YouTube channel, and you can spend a whole hour on how to craft a world-class listing, pre-listing presentation book and package. And we'll send them testimonials and talk about our company's market share and all the good stuff that we want them to know about us, but stuff that we don't want to dwell on when we get face-to-face in this appointment. Because in this appointment, it needs to be about you and your needs. In this appointment, it can't be about me bragging about how great my company is. God bless you, Daniel. And bragging about all the awards that I've won. If this becomes about me and not about you, then we're in trouble, right? And too many agents make their presentations all about how great they are and less about the client and the client's needs. So we're going to set the control, we're going to set the agenda, we're going to ask, do they have any questions from the materials that we sent them, so that we can answer them at the right time in the presentation. And guys, this doesn't take long. 60 seconds. After we say our gratitude before we get started, I want to tell you I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Here's where I envision things going. And then we move right into step number 2. And one of 3 things may happen tonight, and this is a good transition statement. This is a little scripted phrase that I'd encourage you to memorize, because ultimately we need to get a decision in this appointment. We cannot leave this listing appointment without the listing. A decision has to be made, right? You would be stunned how many times agents get through their whole presentation and then are content to say, well, why don't you take some time to think about it, and I'll call you in a couple of days. Do not do that. Here's what we know. If you don't get the signature when you're in front of them, the chances of getting it are bad. Your chances of getting the listing become 30% if you don't get it in your first appointment. So we're going to make a decision. And here's a really good script to memorize. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, tonight, one of 3 things is going to happen. You might decide to hire me to list your home, and that would be great. You might not decide to list your home with me. And quite honestly, that wouldn't be so great. Now, guys, in the screen here, do you see list your home with me highlighted in yellow? What do we call that? Does anybody know what kind of phrase we call that in sales? It's what we call a command phrase, right? An embedded command. What we're doing is we're actually speaking a little bit to their unconscious when we're structuring this phrase. Let me take a minute and talk about commands for a second. The human brain processes language in very specific and predictable ways. And we know that when we say to do something, the brain tends to obey. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example of this. And some of you have heard this example in other classes, but this is a really powerful example that I think speaks to this point. If I was to say to you a command, like, for example, just generally speaking, do your homework, empty the laundry basket, all these commands that we have with our kids. Anybody have kids that we use commands like this? Go to bed, do your chores, empty the dishwasher. That doesn't necessarily mean that our children behave and follow our commands, but the brain processes language in very specific ways. If I was to say to you in the next 5 seconds, under no condition, now listen carefully, under no condition, do not, under any circumstance, do not think of a dog. How many of you thought of a dog? Quick show of hands. I saw some hands, and I kind of sort of, I begged you not to. I begged you not to, but the moment you heard think of a dog, your brain said, okay, and an image of a dog popped in for almost everyone, because that's the way the brain works. And when we know that we can leverage that concept and put commands into the conversations that we have, it can help you have people make decisions to hire you. So the command would be, list your home with me. And when you say it like this, you might decide to list your home with me. You might not decide to list your home with me. They've heard it twice now. They don't even notice that they're hearing it. This is a powerful linguistic technique. And then the third part of the script says, if I determine that my skills and services are not the right fit for you and your unique needs, I might decide not to take your listing and refer you to someone else who could better suit your needs. Does that sound fair? So that's the script, guys. Let me go back real quick. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we go through, this is where I envision things going tonight. We're going to take about 60 minutes. We're going to do this, that, and the other thing. And then we transition right into one of 3 things is going to happen tonight. You might decide to list your home with me. You might not decide to list your home with me. And if I determine that my skills and services are not the right fit for your unique needs, then I might decide not to take your listing after all and refer you to someone else who would be better suited. Does that sound fair? That third thing causes some agents some distress. Why would I possibly introduce the idea that I'm not the right agent for them? Anybody have some thoughts around that?
It just shows that they're in control again.
You're putting them in control, Dan, right? And it's a little bit of a pattern interrupt. The reason why people don't like salespeople so much is because they think we're pushy all the time. We're going to push them into something, whether it's right or not. We're going to try to get them to sign with us. And when you do something different than they expect, and you say to them, you know what, I'm really good at what I do, but if I think that I'm not the right fit for you and that somebody would do even better, then I would be content to walk away from a commission so that you get better served. That is not what they expect from a salesperson. And it causes them to trust you more, right? And it causes them to feel better. And so it's a little bit of a takeaway as well. A takeaway that says, you know, I have this really good thing to offer you, and maybe you'll get it, and maybe you won't. What it does is it allows people to start to say, hey, I'll show you how much you want my listing. And they actually begin to kind of push for you to take their listing. So that is a really important script, and we lead with that. One of three things is going to happen. Hold on for just 1 second, if you would. I just got a... okay, we're done. I don't need to follow up on that one. So now here's what we do. We move on to the next phase. We've accomplished the first task. We've outlined where we're going to go. We've sort of set things up for a decision. Now we've got a green light. And here is the transition. Through each one of these steps, guys, the transition is going to be this: summary and introduction. We summarize what we just did. We summarize the task that we just completed, and we introduce where we're going to go next. So in setting the agenda, we've completed that task. We simply say, okay, now that we've outlined what we're going to do tonight, let's now talk a little bit about what's going on with you guys. And we do the needs analysis. And in the needs analysis, we already have some ideas of what their needs are. We've done some pre-qualifying. We're not just showing up out of the blue to do this consultation appointment. We've talked to them. We've determined they're ready, willing, and able to meet for this appointment. We know some things, but what we're going to start to do is review what we know. And it sounds a little bit like this. Julia, when we spoke on the phone, one of the things that you said was that you're looking to sell your house and you're looking to move to California because that's where your parents live. Is that correct? And we're going to make sure that we understand. And it's important for you to be closer to your parents right now because, and we make sure that we understand that picture, and we review what we think we understand about their motivation. And we ask, is there anything else that's driving this decision that would be important for me to understand? Why are we doing that? What are we doing here? We're getting them to self-disclose all over again, triggering that self-disclosure loop. And we're paying close attention. This whole first part of the presentation is built around getting you to like me. So I'm getting you to talk again about what's important to you and why it's important to you and what you're trying to accomplish. And I'm listening intently. And they're beginning to start to feel more and more heard and more understood. And I know that I already know parts of this, but I'm asking again to build momentum. And then what I want to do is I want to recognize that not only are we trying to complete this transaction, but they have to have a good experience with us as well. We do business inside of an experience economy. And in the experience economy, it's not enough to just get the job done. We have to get the job done and create a good consumer experience, or they won't use us again and they won't refer us again. Anybody have any businesses that you've dealt with that have either done a really great job of creating a user experience or a really bad one that you can talk about for a minute? Who are some of your favorite vendors to do business with? Anybody?
For instance, I use a home inspector that he does such a good job where he'll explain every little detail about the home and how things work. And It's just phenomenal, and I use them all the time.
And as a result, you feel like you get what you need. The customers feel like they get what they need. And so that's kind of what we're talking about. And so we need to find out in the needs analysis, what do they need to happen, not just to make this a successful transaction, but a good experience as well. And so we're going to ask those questions. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I understand why you're looking to sell your home and what you're trying to accomplish here, but now let's talk a little bit about what needs to happen for this to be a good experience for you. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best experience you could ever have that you could not wait to tell your friends about, and 1 being a total train wreck, what needs to happen for this to be a 10 for you? And that's the kind of question we ask. And then we stop and we listen. And they're going to say whatever they're going to say. What kinds of things do you think people might say if we asked a question like that? What needs to happen for this to be a great experience for you? What do you think people are going to tell you?
That they have to sell the house quickly.
Get the home sold quickly. I want to get
the price they want.
I want to get a good price, right? That needs to happen again, right? And you're also going to hear things like, I need to feel like the communication is good. I need to feel like you're responsive to my needs. I don't want to feel like you're pushing me, right? Lots of different things. People are going to self-define what needs to happen for this to be a good experience for them. We're going to ask those questions and we're going to pay attention to their answers and really make sure that we can deliver. Now, don't be afraid to back into what makes this a good experience by asking about a bad experience. A lot of times we're afraid to do that, but it might be a question that sounds like this. And, you know, now that you've sort of helped outline what a good experience looks like, help me understand what a bad experience might look like, because I don't want that to happen. One of my very first coaches, when I first came to this company, my very first coaching session, here's what they said to me. How do people win with you? And then the follow-up question is, how do people lose with you? Like, what's the parameters of what a relationship looks like? How can people disappoint you? Because I want to have a good relationship with you and I want to know what the rules are. And I think it's important for us to ask similar questions of our clients. Agents are sometimes afraid that if I ask a question like, how could I disappoint you, that I'm going to introduce an idea that maybe I might do something to screw up. Well, guess what? You might. And you'd be better off knowing that in advance. We are human beings, and human beings have a way of sometimes disappointing each other. I don't think you're going to introduce an idea that doesn't already exist. What you're actually doing by asking, what could I do to mess up, is letting people know that their experience really matters to you. And so you want to know the good and the bad, and you're going to commit to doing the good. But the needs analysis is a big part of this interaction. And we ask about what needs to happen from a transactional standpoint, what needs to happen from an experiential standpoint. And when we believe that we understand what they need to have happen here, then we get a green light. And if we still have any lingering questions, we ask more questions. But when we feel like we get the picture, what needs to happen for this to be a win, we move on to the next phrase, and we do it by summary and introduction. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, now that you've made really clear what needs to happen in order for this to be a good interaction and a good experience, let's take a minute and talk about the market conditions that we're going to be doing this in. And this is where we transition from getting people to like us to getting people to trust us. Because in the very beginning, the needs analysis, the setting the agenda, all of these things are done to try to create a sense of safety, to try to trigger that self-disclosure loop so that people feel heard and people feel understood and people feel paid attention to. And now they're sufficiently liking us that we can transition into, let me do a little bit of showing you what I know. Here's the market conditions that we're in. This is what the average level of inventory is right now. This is how long homes are averaging on the market. This is what percentage of the asking price the average home is selling for. And we talk about the market conditions because here's the thing, we're eventually going to have a conversation about price. And price is only relevant in a context. Depending on the conditions of the market, the price is always contextual. So before we can have a pricing conversation, we got to make sure they accurately understand the dynamics of the market, and we're going to educate them about that. And we're going to educate them about the things that have influence in getting homes sold. We're going to talk about how important it is that we price it accurately. And this little graphic here is a good one. It's one that you can lean into. It comes from the Win with Sellers course material, or you can find it in the book Shift. And it's the in the market and out of the market graphic. And this is where we start to educate sellers about the way buyers perceive value, right? And if you look at this graphic here, on the left margin, the left continuum is price, and on the right is condition. Because value is always a function of three things, right? Price, condition, and what's the third one? Location, right? People determine value based on the price and the condition for its location. I can't change the location easily. I mean, in theory, I guess I could put the house on a flatbed and drag it down the block. But for the most part, it is where it is. The only things I can adjust are the price or improve the condition. And if you look at this graphic, what it visually demonstrates is that on the left side is price. The ones at the highest price are at the top, the lowest price are at the bottom. On the right part is condition. The very best condition is on the left. The worst condition is on the right. The combination of the very best condition and the very lowest price are the homes that are truly in the market. Those are the ones that everyone wants to compete for. The homes that are priced too high and are in the worst condition are out of the market. Those are the ones that nobody cares about. No one is seeing them. Nobody is visiting them. And then there's this dangerous gray zone, this no man's land area, where maybe the price is really good, but the condition isn't that great. Or maybe the condition is really good, but the price is too high. And that combination puts us in a place where we're not really the most competitive homes. And when people see ours, the only thing it's going to do is reaffirm that a different home is a better option. And so, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we need to make sure that we price your home competitively so that for the condition and the location, we are seen as the very best option. And this is just a visual graphic that we can use in our prop book to have that kind of a conversation. We'll talk about pricing. We'll talk about staging, just how important it is to have a well-staged home so that people walk into it and they fall in love. Right? Staging is all about creating an emotional experience. And so we're going to provide education here. And this period of time is where you get to show that you know your stuff. You know the market conditions, you know what impacts value, you know how important, what's the most important thing, and we're going to have this conversation. And when we're fully convinced that they understand what they need to understand, then and only then can we have a conversation about price. And so we have to take our time here, right? And be ready, because you're going to come in and in stage number 2, which is the needs analysis, they're going to want to jump right down to, oh, can we get to the pricing conversation? And the answer is no, not yet. I'm not ready yet. We'll get there. And so we have to get really good at deflecting and getting back on track, because they will pull you off track. And if you let them pull you off track, you break the momentum of this sequence and it will not work. But when you're ready, when you've provided the education and you feel like they get it, then we get a green light and we summarize and transition our way into the pricing conversation. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, now that you have a good understanding of the market conditions that we're in and the things that are going to influence the sellability of your home, let's actually have a conversation about pricing. And this is where we do our CMA, right? And we remember that a CMA is exactly what the letters stand for. It's a comparative market analysis. All we're doing in the CMA is analyzing how does our home stack up to other homes so that we can make an intelligent decision about how to position the current home into the market so that we can generate a response from the buyers. A CMA is not where you come in and tell them what to list for. Do not do that. Some of your software that you can use to do a market analysis will sometimes give you a price or even a price range. I would encourage you to delete that page and guide them through a conversation where you're looking at similar homes that have recently sold, similar homes that have recently gone under contract, similar homes that went on the market and didn't sell so that we can learn from their misfortune, and then similar homes that are still on the market today. And we look and compare and we have a conversation about how we stack up to all those different homes. And then we ask a self-discovery question that sounds something like this. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, after reviewing all of these comps and understanding the market conditions as we've outlined them before, what do you think would be a fair price to ask for your home? We're not going to tell them, we're going to ask them. The moment you tell them the price to list at, you are in trouble. Because unless the market delivers exactly what you say, they're not going to be happy. If I tell you, who will I pick on? Stephanie. If I tell you, Stephanie, that we should list your house at $599,000, and you say, okay, that sounds like a plan, and we go on the market and the offers start coming in for 520 and 525 and 530. I told you 599. How do you feel about me as your agent? Not so good, right? You told me that we should ask 599 and nobody is offering anywhere near that. Now, here's what happens. If I tell you the very same thing, Stephanie, I believe that we should list your home for 599, and we go on the market and suddenly the market reacts and offers start coming in for 630 and 640 and 650. Are you happy? Well, you're probably happier if you expected that the offers were going to come in around 599. But what do you think about me as your agent? What you think is you didn't even recognize how good my house was. I had a $650,000 house and you told me 599. You're dumber than the other guy. Right. And so the thing that we have to do is we have to guide people into a landing strip, if you will, of a price range where we're comfortable. So we have to know the market. We have to have our own opinion, but we're going to guide them in through a conversation that says, based on this CMA, what do you think is fair? And that is a very scripted phrase. What do you think is fair? Notice I did not ask, how much would you like to list your home for? Because here's the thing, if I ask you what you'd like, you would like to get more money than it's worth. And so I'm going to set you up to overprice the house if I ask you what you want. I'm not going to ask you what you want. I'm going to ask you, what do you think is fair after we looked at all these comps? You're going to be then more inclined to give a number that's in line with the comps that we just reviewed. And if you don't, and you look at all the numbers, and I pointed out all the numbers, every comp is 550, 560, 570. And I ask you, what do you think is fair? And you say to me, you know what, Hal, I've seen all your comps, but what I really want is to get 650 because I put more money into the house and I need to get my money out. That's a very common dilemma for us in our listing appointments. How would you handle that? What would you say? Someone unmute and give me a response. How would you respond to somebody who wants to grossly overprice their home?
I have an idea.
Go ahead.
Maybe you could say, this is just what the current market conditions are telling me right now. And it's nothing, personal, and you guys have a great house.
Yeah.
This is just what it's telling us.
You could kind of lean into the idea of, I don't make the market, I just interpret the market, and these are the numbers, and this is what the numbers are telling us. This isn't about personality, right? The thing that I will tell you is you can't tell them anything in this moment. You've got to ask more questions because the price has to be a self-discovery. It has to be their price. It can't be ours. The moment we start to tell them anything about why their price is wrong, they're going to get defensive and try to prove us wrong. And so we have to ask more questions, questions like, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what was it in these comps that led you to that number? Help me understand. And they'll tell you there's nothing in those comps. Those are perfectly fine comps, but I ended up spending more money because I put in a new kitchen and I put in a new basement and I didn't want to get that money out. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, do you buy a house? When you're going to buy your next house, are you concerned about what the current owner invested in their maintenance of that house, or are you going to buy it based on what the value is to you? These are questions, right? Self-discovery questions. And ultimately, we might even go back to a price range. A lot of times it's useful to go into a price range. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if we look at the current market activity, homes that like yours that have sold, have closed between 570 and 590. What was the price range that prices came in on your home? Would that be satisfactory for you? Right? We're always steering people in, and this is an art, guys. We've got to get practiced up on asking lots of questions that guide people through, just like a trial attorney. Trial attorney doesn't get people on the stand and say anything to the jury. They ask questions and let the story unfold in a predictable way based on the questions that they ask, so that the jury hears the story that they want told. We need to ask questions that guide people into the price that we want. And one of three things might happen tonight. Remember our first script? You might choose to list your home with me. You might not choose to list your home with me. And if I decide that I'm not really a good fit, I might not take listing. One of the ways that we could be a bad fit is if you ask me to be a magician instead of a real estate agent, because I don't do magic and I can't make the market pay more than market value. And so if a condition of getting the listing is that you want me to list it at a price that I don't believe I can sell it for, I would prefer to let you down tonight than disappoint you later. And so we've got to decide, is there a walkaway place for us, right? And this CMA conversation is the most critical part. Can we get them to price the home at a price that we believe the market will bear? If we can, green light. If we can't, red light. And it may be red light and we're done. It may be it's not a good fit for me, right? Because taking an overpriced listing is a liability for you in your time, in your marketing dollars. And there's an awful lot of it that can get invested in there that doesn't turn into anything if you can't get the price right. Now, today, guys, to be fair, our market is so blazing hot. I don't know how far you'd have to overprice a house to be overpriced in this market. Everything seems like it's selling for 20%, 30%, 40% over asking price. If you're going to get greedy, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, today's your day. Yay for you. Because the market seems to show that this house is a $600,000 house. But what I'm starting to see is buyers are paying $700,000 for $600,000 houses in this market. If you're going to try a crazy number, this is the market to do it in. But try your number and then adjust quickly. Because if the market doesn't react, we've got to get back down fast. But this conversation is the next step. We've moved from the needs analysis into the education. When they understand the market conditions, then we can move into this conversation about pricing. And if we get a price range that we like, then we move on. And what's the next thing? The next thing is expectations. Now that we've come up with a price that we both think is a good starting point, and guys, remember the language here is not a price that your house will sell for. I don't know what your house is going to sell for. My crystal ball is broken. But what I do know is if I can get a price that I believe the market will get excited about and start some competition, that's where we're going to go. And once we've come up with that, we move on to expectations around your service plan. Let's talk now about the aspects of my marketing plan. These are the things that I intend to do to help you get your home sold. And we can talk about our open house program, and we can talk about our prospecting program, and we can talk about our marketing materials and all of that. And then we move on to expectations around communication. Here's the question that I like to ask here. Lisa, it's a little bit like the needs analysis, but it's slightly different. It's Lisa, what do you believe you have the right to expect from me as your agent? What do you believe you have the right to expect from me as your agent? That's actually the question that we want to ask here. And when I ask that question, give me a response. What kinds of answers do you think you'll get from sellers? Someone unmute and play with me here. What kinds of responses do you think you'll get when you ask people, what do you believe you have the right to expect from me?
Communication.
I expect communication, right? I expect that you're going to respond to me quickly or in an acceptable time frame that you guys determine. What else besides communication?
Honesty.
I expect honesty for sure. Integrity. I expect that you're going to present every offer to me, that you're not going to push me in a direction that I don't feel comfortable. This is what I expect. And we set that up because we're building to the close here. We're building to the ask. And how we're going to do that is we're going to leverage the law of reciprocity. What does the law of reciprocity say? Well, when I do good things for you, you're more inclined to do good things for me. And if you have expectations of me, then I've earned the right to some expectations of you. What do I expect from you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? Anybody have some ideas of things that they would expect from their sellers?
Trust.
Trust me. Respond to me too. Communication is a two-way street. When I ask for information, I need you to respond back.
Follow directions.
Follow directions. Keep your house clean, right? Be ready for showings. Don't turn people away, right? Try to keep the house looking good. Try not to create any stinky smells inside. This is not a good time to have a bluefish eating contest, right? Or a curried bluefish cook-off. Not a good night to be cooking that when we're showing homes. I love curry, but not, right? And so this is what I have the right to expect of you. And here's the thing. If we both find there's no deal killers here, because guys, this could be a place where they do have an expectation of you that you can't live up to. I have had sellers say to me, I do not want a for sale sign in front of my house. My neighbors are all busybodies. I only want the home listed on the MLS, and I don't want anybody entering this house without you present. And so what that means is that if a buyer reaches out and wants to see this house on 30 minutes notice, you have to cancel whatever you're doing and get here to meet the agent to show this house, because I'm not allowing anyone in this house without you, my agent, present. Is that something that I can live up to? I don't know. I might not be able to do that. Is that something I want to live up to? I don't know. I might not want to do that. More commonly, the expectation traps have to do with subtle ways that they want you to maybe violate fair housing rules. We promised our neighbors that we wouldn't sell to anybody of this ethnicity or this religion, and you're going to have to promise me that we don't do that, right? Guess what? If that's your requirement, I'm not your guy. I'm not your guy, right? I'm not going to do that. And so there really are some places where people could have an expectation of you where you would choose to walk away because it doesn't make sense for you anymore. But if we ask these expectation questions and there's no deal killers, then we're ready to ask for the business. We've established their motivation. We've established what their needs are, what needs to happen to make this a great experience. We've educated them properly about the market conditions. We've come up with a great price. We've outlined what our plan is and how we're going to get those needs met. And how we get to the ask is, again, summary and introduction. But here's the thing. We need to build momentum. The final ask is a leap of faith. To hire you is a leap of faith. And so to take that leap, we need more momentum than we do when we're going from one section to the other. I use the motorcycle jumper image as a way of imparting the idea that you need momentum to get that motorcycle over all those cars. If you're Evel Knievel and you want to jump over all those cars on your bike, you can't start at the base of the ramp and go full throttle and expect you're going to have enough momentum to clear all those cars. You need to start outside the stadium, and you need to come in with speed and momentum and hit that ramp and go. And so we go all the way back to the needs analysis to do our summary and our introduction. and we summarize and summarize and summarize. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you've made real clear what needs to happen to make this a good transaction, what you're looking to accomplish and why it's important to you. You've made it very clear what needs to happen for this to be a good experience for you. My team and I are committed to doing that. You understand the current market conditions very well, what needs to happen in order to create a good outcome about staging and pricing and such. You've come up with a price that we both believe is a good starting point to get the market to react. We asked about expectations, and there's nothing that we can expect of each other that we both believe that we can't live up to. Momentum is being built to the final question. This is where we ask for the business. And you can do it any which way you want. This is the one that I liked. So are you ready to put me to work? Right? And the reason why I want you to go back and summarize your way to that question is because unless we build momentum, asking for the business can be a little bit weird. It can be a little bit awkward. We've come up with a price. We've asked about mutual expectations. When is the right time to pop the question, right? Well, this is my process. I'm going to summarize all the way through to the question. Are you ready to put me to work? And if we've done a good job, which this process lends itself to, and if they do feel that they've been heard and they like us, and they do trust our plan and our market knowledge, there's a very good chance that they're going to say, yeah, let's get started. And then we start to sign the listing agreement, which, by the way, Patty is going to go through tomorrow night. And if they're not ready, then they're going to give us an objection. And if we get the objection, then we have to handle that. And what's the model for handling objections? We isolate the objection. We're going to find out what is the thing that's causing them to be delayed. You know what, Hal? I'm not quite ready to list with you yet because we haven't come up with a commission. We haven't agreed on commission. Did you notice the commission conversation never came up anywhere in here? By design. I'm not having a commission conversation early in the game. Until you've decided that you want to hire me, what my fee is does not matter to you. My fee is only relevant if you're going to think about hiring me. And so until we've gotten to this point where the hiring decision is about to be made, any conversation about your commission can only disqualify you. So we're not going to have it. And learning how to deflect that one is one of the biggest things that we have to learn how to deflect and have it at the right time. And so we isolate that commission objection. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, are you saying that if we can come up with a commission that everyone agrees to, that you're prepared to hire me tonight? And we get an agreement, that's the only thing standing in the way. We isolate that objection. And then once we've isolated that, then we negotiate. And if the objection is about something else, we isolate that objection and we solve it, right? But be ready to handle these objections that happen. And once we've handled the objection, then we move on, right? We move on. We agree to move forward together. We sign the listing paperwork, and then we outline, here's what happens next. And then we lean into our processes. And, we can start to think about, if you go to the YouTube channel, you can watch the contract to close section of the Win with Sellers class, where we start to outline, and there's a similar section in the Ignite class where we outline the processes, what happens first, what happens second. But we finish the same way that we started, with guiding people through what to anticipate. Now that we've made the agreement to work together, here's what you should expect next. Tomorrow, my stager is going to come, and she is going to come in and talk to you about staging the home. Once we've got that done, my photographer is going to come, and my measurer is going to come to create a floor plan. Once we've got that done, then we'll do the next, we'll do the next, we'll do the next. We outline what to expect so that people know that we have a plan. But that's the model, guys. This is the model. It's a consulting model that starts with taking control, setting the agenda, moving on to the needs analysis, moving on to education about the market. This first part is all about building relationship. The next part is all about establishing expertise. And then we move on to pricing, mutual expectations, and close. That's the track in that order. The process from beginning to end should take about an hour. But it could take longer or it could take less, but budget about an hour, right? And when we do it this way, what you're going to find is this model leads to more success than virtually anything else that you can do. It's designed to build confidence in you. It's designed to show your knowledge and your expertise. And it's built around techniques that are designed to build relationship. So what questions do you have about this model before we wrap up for tonight? It's 10 after 7. We're going to wrap it up shortly. But any ahas, any questions, any takeaways, any pushbacks, any things we didn't cover on this that you would want to learn?
I have a quick question, Hal. When you come to the end where it's yes or no, they're going to work with you, and the commission process, if they don't say anything, you say, well, let's talk about commission. How's that come up?
Yeah, I start filling out the listing paperwork, and when I get to the part where the commission is written, I write 6% and I put it in front of them.
Okay.
And I expect a signature. And if they say, wait, hold up, 6%, wait, what? Then we might have to have another conversation.
Okay.
But that's how I do it.
Sometimes in the middle, like I'll get commission like 3 and 4.
You will. And so what you're going to have to get really good at, Jim, is saying, you know what, the commission is an important conversation and we will get there. And if we don't both agree on a commission that we're both happy with, then you don't have to hire me. 1 of 3 things is going to happen. If we're not a good fit, we're not going to work together. That's okay.
Okay.
But we're going to have that conversation later, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, because quite honestly, until you're convinced that I'm the right agent for you, what I charge means nothing. And you're just going to get really good at kind of nudging that downstream, pushing it downstream, right? Now, here's another thing. My personal opinion is that commissions are negotiable. It happens to be true. I teach the real estate licensing class for another organization online. And in all 75 hours, one of the things we say again and again and again is that commissions are fully negotiable. And so if you come in with a hardline non-negotiating stance, then suddenly what you're doing is you're reintroducing resistance that I don't believe needs to be there. There are some coaches out there who believe that we should take a firm stand on commission. This is what my fee is, and it is non-negotiable. And there are some coaches that believe that if you were to negotiate, that is in fact a sign of weakness, that you're being out-negotiated by the sellers. I don't believe that. I believe that commissions are negotiable, and business people in all shapes and sizes decide what it's going to cost for them to provide the services that they provide. You need to know what you need, and you need to be able to negotiate to that point. And if you need 6%, then you may need to start higher to be able to get some negotiating room to get you where you want to be. But the idea that says any kind of negotiation is a sign of weakness and they want a stronger agent, that's a really outdated thought in current sales. I think you have to decide what you need in order to make this worth your while and negotiate to that point. And when people feel as though they were able to negotiate with you to get to that place, and that they were part of that process and they weren't railroaded, this is my price taker, leave it, you're going to have happier clients. So you decide. I'm not going to say what you should do. I am just going to say that if commissions are negotiable, then be willing to negotiate. And understand that there's a million points between 6% and 5%. If people push back on my 6% commission, you don't have to go all the way to 5. You could negotiate to 6 and 7, 8, 5 and 7/8, 5 and 3/4. There's a lot of points that you can negotiate. You could even negotiate what we call a variable commission. Does anybody know what a variable commission is?
I guess it varies what the price you sell the house for.
It could vary on the price. There's a lot of different things it could vary on. For example, Laura, I know that 6% is it sounds like 6% is more than you want to pay. So here's what we'll do. I really believe that if we get you full price so that you can move on and get on to California, if we get you full price, I believe I've earned 6%. Now, if you don't get full price, yes, since I get paid a percentage of the sale price, I'm going to be taking less anyway. However, if we have to accept anything 95% and 99%, I'll come down to 5 3/4 or 5.5. So anything to 90 to 95. There was some really weird background noise there.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was. Sounds like somebody's having some dental work done. If we have to go to 95%, then I'll come down to 5.5. Or You could condition it upon, well, it's back. I'm going to mute everybody again. We may condition on time. You said it's really important that you get to California quickly. So if I can get you under contract in 2 weeks, I believe I've earned 6%. If it takes 2 weeks to 30 days, I'll come down to 5.5. 30 days to 60 days, I'll come all the way down to 5. There's lots of variables that you can put in where there's a pathway for you to get 6% and for them to get less. That is a great strategy. I have almost never had somebody push back on 6% built into a variable commission structure where under certain circumstances they could pay less, right? So be prepared to negotiate. What other questions do you have about the listing consultation?
I have another question about the commission. First of all, I like the variable commission because that shows that you're motivated to sell it at a higher price. But my other question was, in Keller Williams, do we not go below 5%? Is there? I remember hearing a rule about that. Is that correct?
That's a great question. The answer is kind of. Let me explain that. Let me start by framing this out that we're an agent-run company, meaning we have an agent leadership council that largely sets policy for the organizations. And it was the agent leadership council in Ridgewood years ago that said, we want to set a commission floor. As agents, we don't want somebody to go rogue and to start doing 3% commissions and cut all the rest of us off at the knees. So we're going to sort of agree that as a matter of company policy, we're not going to accept a commission less than 5% unless there's an extenuating circumstance. And while their commissions are fully negotiable, your agent leadership teams have sort of set a commission floor around that. Now, I said that there's extenuating circumstances. There can be carve-outs to that. Nothing is 100%, 100%. If you have the desire to go below 5%, you're going to need to kind of get the blessing of your broker, because ultimately your broker, you're taking listings on behalf of your brokerage. Your broker is going to have to bless that. So talk to your broker about what the conditions are. And here's what I know. New construction never pays 6%. Builders never pay 6%. The common thing for new construction is 4%. And so if you have a builder who says, what are you, crazy? It's a 4% in the new builders market. Your broker is going to sign off on 4%. If you have a scenario and there are certain towns, and you can go to your team leaders and talk about which towns this applies to, because I honestly don't know the answer in your market. But there are certain towns that when we opened up our franchise offices, there were well-established discount brokers that were already doing business. And what was the norm in certain communities was to take listings at 4% and offer only 2% out to cooperating brokers, not more. And to not put you at a competitive disadvantage, then there are certain towns where there's a carve out. If a certain percentage of brokers, that 4% or lower is the norm, and you can show that through the MLS data, that there's certain towns where there's a carve out to flex below 5%. And if you've capped, meaning you're going to keep 100% of the commission anyway, and the broker's not making any of that, then you have a lot more carte blanche, right? So it's kind of sort of know that 5% is the floor. And the part of the reason why also that they wanted to set that floor is sometimes we're just needing to get some better script on how to handle that, how to handle the objections, and your brokers can help, right? But think 5% is the floor, but there can be other circumstances where you can sometimes go and make a case. And if you can make a good case, go ahead and make it. I had a woman one time come to me when I was a team leader in another office. And here's what she said. She said, I know that we don't take listings for less than 5%. However, this is a very, very good friend of mine, one of my dearest friends. And she came to me and asked me to sell the house and list the home because she's been diagnosed with advanced metastatic cancer and she doesn't have health insurance. She's an independent contractor just like me. And she doesn't have health insurance and she needs to sell her house to pay for her medical treatment. And quite honestly, I don't want to take a commission and take that money away from her medical care. So I want to waive the listing side commission. And there I am, a team leader saying, what the hell am I supposed to say to that, right? What kind of an ogre would say, oh, nope, sorry. And so we have to negotiate. Now, here's the other side of that, though. We are a company that profit shares. And so any profit that the company would make on the transaction is shared with the agents. And so we have, to some extent, sort of a contract, if you will, that we're not going to waive commissions and impact the profit share of the agents who are earning profit share. And so what we chose to do in that scenario was to say, look, you can waive your commission dollars. However, we still do need to collect the commission dollars that would become owner's profit that would then be shared with the profit share. And what we chose to do, what I chose to do as the CEO of the company at that time, was to say, we're going to collect the dollars so that it factors into profit share for distribution. And we as a company will choose to donate back as a gift at closing the money that we earned so that the seller was whole and we didn't take those commission dollars. Everything is negotiable, guys. Be willing to negotiate, right? Go ahead, Veronica.
What happens when you negotiate and then you negotiate with the buyer's agent and then the buyer's agent say, I will give up my commission if you give up your commission to make a deal close? What happens then?
Well, then you're going to have a harder time because your broker is less likely to sign off on that. You know, here's what I believe. I believe that I don't give up commission dollars to come to a meeting of the minds that doesn't exist. If buyers and sellers have not come to an agreement on price, and the only way that we can bridge it is to give up brokerage dollars, I don't typically do that, right? Now, if we've come to a meeting of the minds and maybe something has happened, maybe there's an inspection issue that can't seem to be resolved and the deal's about ready to fail, and if each agent chips in for the hot water heater, we can put it behind us, then that's a business decision that you have to make, right? And I would not necessarily say don't do that. To have to go all the way back and start from ground zero again could be foolish, right? But I don't personally believe in throwing commission dollars as finding a way to come to an agreement that doesn't exist. I do sometimes believe we can put commission dollars in to save a deal that was already consummated that might fall apart otherwise. But do that as a business decision, right? And just because another agent feels like that's the fastest and easiest way to resolve an uncomfortable negotiation problem doesn't necessarily mean that you have to subscribe to it. Right? Anything else? I see a hand. Go ahead, Lisa.
So Hal, how quickly do people pack up their homes? Are they mostly packed up before they sign the listing in anticipation of this, or do they sign the listing and then all of a sudden they've lived there for 30 years and they're like, I don't even know where to start?
Well, yes, that's a great point. So part of before we're assessing ready, willing, and able, right? When we go out there and we're ready to sign the listing agreement, at that point, we want that house decluttered and ready to go. And if they've got 30 years worth of stuff, they may need time. And so when we're talking to them and we're having those qualifying questions, one of the things that we may determine is we may have to take a month or two and get this house ready for sale. Now, that's different than packed, right? Because packed is more get the moving company out, everything in boxes and ready to go. We don't do that towards the very end. But I for a listing that I just have that's going to close in a few weeks, I met them in November and began the conversation about getting 30 years worth of stuff out of the house before we put the house on the market in April.
Yeah.
And they needed every ounce of of those months to get that house done, because it's amazing how much crap you generate in 30 years. And I'm telling you, those companies that just come and they talk about how you look at it and you blink and magically it goes away, those got junk companies, those are a godsend, because they can take a lot of stuff out really fast, right? What other questions do you have tonight?
Okay.
Any? Oh, can you show me where to find the scripted listing appointment? Oh, yeah, I'm going to do that then. So anybody who wants to go, I appreciate you hanging with me tonight. And I hope there was some value in this conversation. If you want to stick around and see where to find the listing presentation that has the script in it, I'll do that right now for those that you want to stick around. But tomorrow, come back tomorrow and Patty will walk you through the listing paperwork. Okay. So let me stop the screen share and start a new one real fast. I've got to get to the KW page. So let me do that first. And do you see my KW landing page here? Okay, now what you're going to do is you're going to go to the education tab where so many things are. Right up at this top in black, you click on education, it's going to take you to Keller Williams University. And the scripted listing presentation is actually part of the first version of Ignite. Ignite is the foundational skill course that we teach. Currently, we teach the Ignite 2.0 class. It's the revised, the upgraded version. But the original version still lives here. And if you go to just regular old Ignite, not Ignite 2.0, but regular Ignite right here, and click on that box, it's going to take you to the landing page for this course. And here you're going to find all the course materials. Where you see student resources, you're going to click on this. And it's going to take you to all the different sessions. Now, this version of Ignite had 12 sessions. The current version has 18. But you're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom to where you see additional resources. And here you're going to see a buyer's needs analysis form. And it says US after it. And you're going to see certain things say Canada after it. And some things even say Canada Francois, where you can get it in French Canadian if you're so inclined. We're going to go here to where it says listing presentation agent script and listing presentation client. Both carbon copies of the same thing. It's just that the agent one has the script in it. So I'm going to download it real quick so you can see it. Give me a minute to open it up. I might have to do a different screen share. Stick with me. It's loading up slowly but steadily. Do you see a guide for selling your home on the screen, or do I have to do a new screen share? New screen share. Okay, here we go. All right, this is what it is. Do you see now a guide for selling your home? Do you see where it says agent copy here?
Yes.
That's the script. And as you scroll through it, what you see on this page is the exact same thing they're going to see. It's just that theirs does not have a script in it. So you go to page 1 and here's your guide in preparation. And it tells you to show up on time and confirm the appointment and all those different things. And then when you show up at the appointment, it says, tell this. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to get your home sold. There's a little gratitude script. And you're going to review, it says, the pre-listing package that you sent in advance. And then it says, ask, did you have a chance to review the guide that I left you? And if they say yes, you're going to say, great. Did you complete the questionnaire on the back? And if they say no, you're going to say, well, let's review that packet before we move on. And it just tells you page by page what to say. We're going to go on to page 2. What they're going to see in their copy is simply this, the thank you and the goals for today. And your copy says, say this, we've got 6 goals for today's meeting, and you're quickly going to run through them. And then say about goal number 6. It's just going to put the script right in there. And so download that and practice it. Look at it, see what it says, see what it's asking you to say, get comfortable with where it's going. And then if you had to go and just have that right in your lap in front of you and you were reading from the script, do it. You'll be okay. Will it be the very best listing consultation of your career? Nope, it won't. But if you had to go tonight and you didn't know what to do, that'll get you through. Okay, so that's where you're going to find that.